The best bits of the actor feature team Q&A. There was loads in this hour. A lot of it was we'll see down the line, but I'm focusing here on the best bits that were kind of the things they're actually working on. So we've got some big information on Salvage. We've got some actual information on Salvage, which is really cool. We've got some stuff on medical gameplay, inventory, FPS scanning, all sorts of stuff. So let's get into it. First up, are they going to do anything to make the helmet a bit easier to use?
That is actually something we're working on at the moment. So we've been playing around with this a little bit in game currently. So the idea is that you'll be able to remove your helmet as an actual action. So you can potentially either carry it under your arm, so it's kind of like tucked under your shoulder a little bit, or it will be attached to an actual, almost like a clip or something on your suit that's basically like a little item port. So like how we do with the weapons and stuff at the moment, which I think is currently located on the hip. We've been moving it around a little bit just to see where best fits. But this just means that, your helmet is still available, but you've still got your hands free to do everything that you want to do. So, you can eat, drink, get into a fight in a bar or whatever while you've still got your helmet handy. So again, that kind of ties into what I just said, where it's like you can quickly take your helmet off, put it on your belt or whatever, have something to eat and drink, quickly put it back on again without needing to go into the inventory and start, moving things to and from your backpack or dropping it on the floor or anything awkward like that. So totally. And, obviously as well, actions to kind of move this around. Obviously, we're potentially going to try and find a key binding for it so it's nice and easy to use. And then, if not, it will still be on the personal inner thought menu anyway. So it should be a nice and easy action to trigger.
That sounds pretty good. Not having to unequip it and re-equip it every time you want to have a drink or eat some food will be much better. Next up, we're talking about EVA and what's coming next.
Big change coming for EVA is that it's going to be requiring fuel. So the idea is you haven't got indefinite thrust, and that heavily ties into the 0G push pull. We want to encourage you to use it. So you're actually thinking about where you're expending fuel, where it's best to clamber on the surface instead of zooming around like Iron Man. So going back to the decoupled part, it is very much a part of both 0G and EVA. If you imagine you're clambering slowly over a surface, that's going to be the general sort of traversal whilst you're in 0G, but you will be able to sort of push off. And that's going to be whether you're moving between different objects, or if you're on the surface of a ship, going from one ship to another, between, there's loot or whatever, like the ship's exploded, you want to go get the cargo boxes, or perhaps there's, you want to get to an asteroid so you can start mining, etc. That will be, decoupled in terms of I move in a direction, I keep moving until something else occurs to prevent me from that movement carrying on. But we're also going to be introducing sort of skimming across surfaces. So the slow sort of ponderous clambering movement is going to be one part of the 0G push pull, but you're also going to be able to just push yourself along the surface. And that's, it's the equivalent of a sprint in 0G, but it's going to be using sort of Newtonian decoupled physics to achieve that. The EVA itself, it's changing a little bit. So I would say it's sort of decoupled light. And before you get sad, I'll describe why I say that. So the idea is you will thrust in a direction. You can then release the input and stop that thrust. You will continue indefinitely in that direction. If you start to look around, again, you keep going in that direction. But if I turn and then I give another thrust input, I will start to thrust in that direction. And where that differs from the decoupled mode, you could be, traveling one direction, you turn 90 degrees, and then you start to thrust in that direction. You've still got that momentum in the original direction. We want to not have that for EVA. We want more of a sense of, the Iron Man flying sensation. So you will have the equivalent of coupled flight whilst you're reorientating yourself and changing the thrust vector. But once you've released the thrust input, then you go back to the sort of decoupled model. So it's kind of a halfway in between. We've got that working now, and it feels fun. We think we found the fun there. Hopefully that answers the question.
So those changes to me sound great. The ability to keep momentum in space as you're EVAing sounds wonderful, and this kind of semi-decoupled mode sounds great. So hopefully that will come to us. Who knows when we'll get that, but sounds good. Anyway, let's move on to Salvage. Where are we at?
Salvage is a really, really exciting feature. It's something that I'm working on currently. You're going to be able to salvage the hull from a ship. So you're in a dogfight with another player. You blow up their ship, and you've taken some damage to your ship as well. You're going to have the multi-tool. and you'll be able to jump out of your ship and salvage the debris from the guy that you just took out, and then float back to your ship and do some patch repairs onto the different parts that got damaged. Visually, it looks really cool because you just hoover up the metals on from the ship, and it just feels really nice to use. And yeah, it provides you like a way to repair your ship, or also gain some resources from destroying someone else's ship. We do have quite a lot of ships in our game, so it's it needs to look. You need to be able to salvage pretty much every ship in the game, and what we're working on.
So it's a technical challenge.
Yeah, it's a technical challenge. Yes, thank you.
Obviously,
Well,
we've had some ships that were made, several years ago. So
Yeah.
there's obviously problems that arise from those. Like people fixing issues on them, re-exporting them, and not realizing something's broken, or tech has advanced on the newer ships that has kind of like made them potentially, look a little bit better when they take damage and things like that. So there's some catch-up work to do on both like the tech and content side. But like what you showed me the other day, Joris, was really cool, where it's like when you're actually repairing the ship, you don't actually restore the paint, you just restore like the base metal layer, where it's like, oh, this is super cool. I've been through a dogfight and I've patched myself up. I can see exactly where I was hit previously and where
There's some
I repaired.
scarring on your
Exactly.
ship.
So when you're going to start seeing people landing at space stations and stuff and whatever, you're going to actually be able to see like, oh, this guy has been through some stuff, like it almost tells a bit of a story about where they've been. So it's really, really exciting.
How are you going to salvage enemy ships when they despawn 10 seconds after you blow them up?
Yeah, it's one of those technical challenges that we're working on.
We're aware of a lot of these issues, and that's why we're being cagey about saying more.
That's where things like persistent streaming will come into play.
All exciting stuff. Then there was a question asked, will it work for ground vehicles too, which actually leads into some interesting information as well.
Yeah, you will. It's working currently. It's I'm mostly using the ships when I'm testing it in my test levels, but yes, you're able to do it on ground vehicles as well. It's basically using the damage map system.
Yeah.
So anything that can be, like currently, if you shoot a ship on the wing, you'll see a big hole on the wing, and we've expanded on that system. And without going into too much technical detail, it's we've made it more consistent. Players will see the same type of damage holes, and also made sure that you can't cheat.
There's a big conversion that had to be done that basically was showing what you were doing on a surface, and it would show for someone else. And it was a big tech hurdle early on that we had to try and get over. And
It was client authoritative, and now we had moved it up to the server.
Yes, exactly. Thank you.
So it sounds on the whole as though Salvage is coming along, and obviously this is only hull scraping, so it's not really the full Salvage gameplay that maybe we were hoping for, but it does sound as though we're going to get it this year. So anyway, that's good news. Let's now move on to a question about medical gameplay, and the question was around, are you happy with how the medical gameplay is and the use of the medical pen?
That's a good question. To start with, I'd say no, we're not happy. Not just in general, with the medical gameplay, should just clarify that. And there's quite sort of a complex sort of ecosystem here that the majority of like the medical gameplay isn't there yet. That there's, we want a larger loop that involves like death of spaceman, so that there's consequence to death, which then informs you the consequence to being injured. There's armors. In fact, JJ can probably talk about that in a little bit. What we want to do with armor specialization and whatnot, and additional items we can release. So no, we're not happy with it. It is something that we're keeping a close eye on. We're absolutely listening to your feedback, and we're aware that it's not something that people are necessarily happy with either. We have looked at making a few little tweaks here and there. So like for 317, for example, like we heard that. And we could tell that the injury stuff just wasn't coming through enough, so we've made it more likely you're going to start to see injuries. So hopefully, the use of those med guns become more important. There are also other issues regarding like just dying straight away. Like quite a few. Like I was really surprised at how many of those we had. We've knocked a load of those out of the park, thankfully. There is still an AI murdering you issue that they're all a bit overzealous at the moment. The AI guys are like hammering that and trying to fix that right now. So to go back to the original question, sorry, no, we're not happy with it. Yes, we are going to try and change things, but we're not 100% sure yet because we really want to get like a lot of other things in first before we can really determine what we're going to do about that.
And then we've got to follow up. What's the kind of future of medical gameplay?
Going back to like that full loop we want to establish. This, I guess, is a little bit of a step away from the medical gun, but just in general, we want costs for using medical beds, and that's for regen and also for healing injuries. And you might think, well, why is that so important? Well, it introduces the aspect of resources being required and also players being able to charge for the use of their medical beds. So, if you wake up in hospital, you get charged. If you wake up a player own ship, then you can get charged for that or for using the services. So, you start to make money out of these things. I think as well, again, this is sort of a bit of a divergence, but it's within the same wheelhouse. At the moment, the drugs we've got are purely sort of medicinal, but we want to basically expand those so that we've got utility drugs. So one of those would be sort of sedatives, so like sort of ties into the hunting stuff and what JJ was saying before about the various different non-lethal weapons we're going to have eventually. But there's also performance enhancing drugs we want to introduce, and those will start to leverage like the drug level a lot more. Introduce things like basically after effects, consequences for taking stuff, the coming down from the high of being able to shoot people repeatedly and whatnot. And then obviously, there's the whole Death of a Spaceman thing where, as I said, it gives you a reason not to die. You don't want to die because eventually you'll die forever and lose a lot of your stuff. Have to spool in your character and then they'll inherit your stuff. So there's lots of sort of consequence we want to introduce.
So it sounds as though the future of the medical gameplay is solid and there's some good ideas there, but it does sound like maybe it will take a while to come. Next up, we're talking all about inventory, which is really interesting, a big info dump here. Where
we are now with inventory is just kind of the first step. Like, the overall design is that everything's physicalized. So at the moment, you've got the location inventory and you've got the ship inventory. That they're a step up from what we had previously, but they're sort of like a magic bag of holding that you can magically access, from anywhere within those volumes. But we definitely want to move away from that. We want it to be that, so within a ship, you've got a point of access where you go to. So you're rummaging around your glove compartment or your large storage bin. Or something that's built into the wall. The idea is that we will eventually swap out all ship interior inventories to have that, and same for ship exteriors as well. We absolutely want an access point where you can go in and add inventories. At the moment, there's only like a couple of ships, 3 ships I think, that have like Aegis, the Gladius Saber, and I think the Starfighter that they've got the external inventories. We want all the ships to have that. So there's lots of work to be done there. Big long-term steps. We want everything to be physicalized and for physicalized cargo as well. That's USPU guys providing that at some point, and that ties in heavily. Over 317, we're allowing you to move ship items, weapons, and whatnot within the inventory. That is absolutely a stopgap. When physicalized cargo comes along, we're going to sort of strip that away because what you have in your ships at the moment is meant to be representative of the lockers that you have on board, the storage bins, the storage compartments that are separate from your cargo. So the idea there is that when we start to introduce those lockers, the ship inventories we have become less important. We start introducing the external inventory interfaces and the ship interiors. That effectively replaces those magic bag of holding things. And longer term with HABs and hangars at some point, that then replaces the need for the sort of the magic bag of holding we have for the location inventories. So am I happy with where we've reached? Yes, we've got a long way to go though. In the short term though, we've got a lot of sort of quality of life things we want to introduce. So I know some people have mentioned the idea of the stuff around your feet, dragging and dropping directly from what's on the floor around you, not just what's in your inventory and what's attached to you. So we definitely want to introduce that. I think Move All is quite a happy sort of, everyone wants that.
Wait, did you say Move All?
I did say Move All, yes. Have you heard it before, by any chance?
Huh? so sorry, just Move All. I just went to like a weird happy place for a second. Continue.
So Cool. So we definitely want to introduce that, and also sort of a quick move. So just to give you an idea there, move all would be move everything from one inventory to, from one side of your one pane to another. So if I'm in my location, I can click move all and drag a bunch of stuff immediately into my ship inventory. That's living the dream. Looting as well. But quick move, we want to do the same thing but for one item. So you can quickly just move that without having to drag. Stacking. We're aware that people want stacking. We're really sorry we didn't get that in the first implementation. It was a host of sort of back-end problems that really sort of got in the way, but with, we've got lots of back-end upgrades coming, and that's going to make that a lot easier. At some point, we will do sort of client-side stacking as well, so those two combined will allow us to stack a lot of things, but I don't know when that's coming, I'm sorry, but it's definitely something we want to do. Mission items, like at the moment, they're still sort of put in your magic pocket. There's another less nice word I could use for that pocket, but yeah, we want it to be tied into the inventory. So you're putting those mission items, you see them in your personal inventory as a result, and those missions are tracking the fact that they're in the inventory now, not in sort of an invisible item put on your body. And yes. Search is another one we definitely want to do. Again, I don't know when that's going to come along, but it is definitely on our roadmap. There's a few sort of niceties as well. So, for example, if you're stood next to a wall and you're with the inventory right now, the camera's on the wall, which isn't great. We have a plan for that. We know what we want to do about it, but we just don't have time to implement it. Same with if you're in like a really dark, low light environment, it can be difficult to see what you're doing on your character. We've got a plan to make that a bit better. So, there's a whole bunch of like quality of life things we want to improve. And introduce, to you, but yeah, work in progress. For some of them further down the line.
So some really nice quality of life stuff coming there, and some bigger plans for the future. Next, and finally, let's get into FPS scanning.
Yeah, I mean, to start off with, it's good to mention that it's going to be the same system we have now for ships, in that we have what we call a signature system that's like deriving radar and scanning. So the fundamentals are the same across both, and the idea there is that they absolutely cross-pollinate. So ships should be able to pick up actors, characters will be able to pick up ships, that kind of thing. It is somewhat different in terms of like passive detection and we describe as active detection. So if you're in a ship, you pick things up just passively by flying around, IR, EM. With the FPS side of things, it's going to be passive for audio. So, if people are firing weapons, you hear footsteps, that kind of thing, that gets picked up. But you're going to have to actively choose the ping to detect EM and IR. We think that's going to sort of give quite a different sort of cadence and feel to it. For actual like scanning though, for getting information on things, the idea is that you can absolutely scan ships. So when you're scanning the ship onto something else or another ship, you'll get a similar experience in the FPS, and that's going to be on the helmet. So you won't have dedicated like device or whatnot. It's going to be primarily based on the helmet and seeing that in your HUD. In terms of what you can actually see on, say, characters. The idea is similar to ships. You can sort of see what weapons, what items and stuff are attached to it. Same with characters. You'll be able to see the weapons, grenades, ammo, etc. that are attached. If they've got a burrito in their pocket, you should be able to find that out as well. And obviously, actor status and whatnot. We want to provide information. So if someone's down or bleeding, you can maybe find that out from range. There's lots of cool things coming from it. We've got some sort of quite big changes to radar and scanning in general as well that's going to be rolling out with FPS. We can't really talk about just yet, but that's all going to be using the same underlying system as in with the signatures, but the interface to it is getting a bit of an overhaul, and that's for both FPS and ships. So hopefully more of that soon, but not yet, unfortunately.
What about when you're not wearing a helmet?
So there will be the lens, but the idea there is that they're sort of quite high-tech and expensive, so you won't necessarily be going out and buying them from your local supermarket, or that's going to be high-end tech that you have to pay quite a bit for. So helmet is going to be the primary method for quite some time. There are some things that utilize the signature system. So, for example, we've got like the mining. You've got the tool that's using signature to find resources and whatnot. So there are other devices that use the underlying system, but in terms of like the core gameplay loop is going to be helmet based.
So there you go, 20 minutes of the best bits. There was more in the episode, so if you want to watch the full thing, go for it. But as I said at the start, a lot of it was stuff that they're thinking about for the future, so it wasn't really that applicable for now. If you like this sort of stuff, subscribe and like this video. You can join the Discord and also become a channel member if you want to send me money. That's enough. I'll see you soon. Bye.